Hi, folks. I'm Rich Lucy, Senior Prevention Program Manager here at the Drug Enforcement Administration in our Community Outreach and Prevention Support section. Welcome to this episode of Prevention Profiles Take 5. I am very excited about this episode. You're going to know why in just a little bit because it includes my backstory. But let me tell you who our guest is and a little bit about her. Our guest is Pat Zuber-Wilson. In April 2019, Pat Zuber-Wilson was appointed Associate Commissioner for the Division of Prevention at the New York State Office of Addiction Services and Supports. In this position, she oversees policy for a continuum of substance use prevention services and problem gambling prevention, treatment, and recovery supports. This work is grounded in prevention science that is data-driven and evidence-based, while at the same time is culturally responsive and community-focused to reach people of all ages. Pat has over 30 years of experience working in various capacities in the executive and legislative branches of government. She joined OASIS in 2007 as the Director of Government Affairs and Federal Policy, where she oversaw the agency's efforts to monitor state and federal legislation, regulations, and policy issues. Pat also currently serves as president of the National Prevention Network. Pat graduated from Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, with a bachelor's degree in organizational behavior and management, and did graduate level coursework at the State University of New York at Albany. And with that, Pat, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me to this opportunity to talk about prevention. One of my favorite conversations.
Well, mine as well. And yeah, so no secret. I've talked about it on this podcast. I've talked about it. It's in my bio. Google me, you'll find out. OASIS is where I cut my professional career teeth, so to speak, in 1991 when I worked in the Prevention Bureau there, and that's where it all started for me. So OASIS always has a deep place in my heart, and I'm sure my spirit is probably roaming the halls somewhere there. From the work that I did.
every corner.
Well, I appreciate that. So Pat, before I get to the first question, I want to tee it up a little bit. Can you tell us about the NPN, the National Prevention Network, who it is and basically what they do?
Yes, the National Prevention Network is a component group of the National Association of State Agency Alcohol Directors, and I apologize, I'm stumbling over that because NASDAD recently changed our name to take out the word abuse, looking to remove the stigma of substance use. So we work, we have directors of prevention from throughout the country. And those directors of prevention really are the resource that help all of us. They oversee policy, funding for prevention services across the country, in the territories. And I can safely say that I have never been to a meeting of the National Prevention Network, and from this point forward, we'll call it the NPN. And I've never come away from those meetings without really having new ideas and new concepts and things that we hadn't thought about here in New York. And having come from OASIS, you know that we are proud New Yorkers and always think we're doing the best and the brightest, but have really learned a lot about prevention and different strategies, things that are happening across the country. So, you know, it's really been an amazing journey working with NASDAD and being part of that team. And I think the other thing I really want to say about being the NPN president, which is amazing, is that I sit on the board as the vice president for prevention for NASDAD. And that is an opportunity to talk to the state directors about prevention. and really gives us an opportunity and platform to make sure that prevention is on that continuum, that that we really work together and try to bring down some of those silos.
Absolutely. And, I always try to make analogies with the higher ed space and my work at both state government and federal government levels. And you talking about being on the board for NASDAD and being in contact with the state agency directors, it's an opportunity to keep prevention on their radar screens, just like it is for the folks on campus trying to keep it on the radar screen of the VP for Student Affairs or the president. It is quite analogous in that regard.
It really is, because sometimes we think about prevention, we talk about prevention, but sometimes I find that I'm promoting prevention and making sure that we are at the forefront of the conversation and part of that conversation. And also, I think the important piece of this, and I'm seeing this here in New York State, is that we really are working cross systems. We're building, taking down the silos. So we have prevention work happening in treatment settings, in harm reduction settings, in recovery settings, in carceral settings. So we're really reaching not only youth and young adults in school-based or academic settings, we're reaching communities, and we're reaching across the lifespan, because we always have to remind individuals about risky substance use. And so it's something that doesn't just stop with youth, it goes throughout the lifespan.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that little bit of context, because I'm sure NPN is going to weave throughout our conversation today. But let me bring it back to OASIS, the state agency, where, again, I started my career there overseeing New York State's efforts to prevent alcohol and other drug misuse among college students. And all throughout my career at both the state government level and all throughout my federal government career, I've heard from campus-based prevention professionals who have difficulty engaging their state agency that deals with drug misuse prevention. I've always said this, I was fortunate, blessed to have worked in the agency that I did that was such a strong supporter. I've mentioned Fran Harding's name plenty of times before. She created the higher ed initiative in New York. She likes to say I took it and ran with it and made it better, but that, remains to be seen, I guess. But, we had the support, and yet there are others who are knocking on the doors of the state agency, and they're running into resistance, if you will, or just apathy. What advice do you have for our viewers who are struggling with this and trying really hard to engage their state agency?
I think it goes both ways, actually, Rich, in terms of engagement with campus communities, reaching out to us and having that open door to have those conversations, but also us reaching out to those campuses and being proactive in our work. A lot of times people don't come to us in prevention, we've got to go to them. So one of the things that we have been very proactive is building the relationship with our state university and our city university administrations, so that we can have conversations with them, talk about what we have to offer, and they have set up space for us to talk to campuses about the work and the services that we provide. And that connection has been very valuable to us. When one of the projects that we have right now, one of the things that we did was we talked to our system administration folks, and they arranged a webinar for our team to talk to some campuses to say, this is what we have to offer. We can provide support, or we might have a prevention provider who's funded in the community that can come and work with your campus because they have that experience with the prevention science. And we also support our, there's meetings on a regular basis of the addiction resource officers or directors within the campuses. And our OASIS team always attends those meetings. We're always available to talk about technical assistance, resources, and supports that we may be able to provide. The other thing that I want to say, and this may come up again, I think it's really important that in terms of a campus, we find a champion. And that champion, having that champion that can come to us, but also that we can go to, is critical. One of the things that we found with one of the early grants that we had with some of the campuses is that we had a great working relationship, and I'm going to use the term for their directors, AOD directors, right? With the AOD director, the person, they're usually in student affairs. We had a great relationship working with them. And when the grant funding ended, we didn't have a champion. We didn't have a champion in the president's office, maybe. We didn't have a champion in student affairs. Of course, the AOD director was a champion, but I guess I'm talking about a higher level champion that says, okay, we're going to keep this work going. And so I would say that that is really one of the key things to think about as you're working with campuses, how to make yourself available. They may not even know that you have services, that you can provide supports. They may not know about prevention science. How do we take the data about your campus? How do we look at that data? How do we develop a logic model? What are we seeing on your campus? And that is through not only survey data that can be available through campuses. Sometimes campuses don't want to share their survey data. It really all depends on the campus. But we also work with the campuses and work with our system administration folks to really look at, for example, is it a campus that has a high rate or high level of disciplinary actions for substance use on campus? Is it a campus that has a low matriculation rate? And we look at some of the data that they maintain on their campuses, working with the campus, working with system administrations, really looking at where the need is. And, we always go back to the science. And you, Rich, being from OASIS and working with Fran, we always go back to the science of prevention, and that's the key piece.
I've appreciated, first, one of the takeaways from your response was that the engagement does go both ways. And I want to make another pitch for campusdrugprevention.gov, our website, because in the resources section, in the state and local pages, there is a map. And just click on your state, and we list there 3 contacts for you, one of which is your NPN contact, and the other are your DEA community outreach contact and your statewide collegiate contact if your state has one. I would, I always make the pitch that we try to make connections at the local level for folks. If, viewers out there, if you're trying to connect with your state agency and having difficulty with that, Pat, I think that it would, because of your connection as the president of NPN, my connections, obviously, with NPN and at the local level, we can help maybe facilitate that introduction for you if that's even what you're looking for.
And I think, and I think that's very important because there are things that happen on campuses sometimes that a campus may not even think about, boy, how does this affect substance use on my campus? I think about, shouldn't say the campus my son went to, but my son was a soccer player at a campus, and I'd go to the soccer games and they had a beer garden open in the space. And I had to look and say, are they IDing kids? Has anybody thought about the social norms around substance use during sporting events? And how is this all working? So I think we bring a lot to the table as a prevention field. And I think working with campuses is going to be very critical to the success of our students. Our students, especially now, are coming out of, I know it seems strange to say coming out of COVID, but these are kids now that we have on campuses that spent part of their middle school and high school years during that period. And so we still have to support them and support some of the things that they face. It's a different world from when all of us were in college. Even my 30-year-old 31-year-old son say, Mom, we didn't have computers in our hands with smartphones. We had flip phones back in the 10 years ago. And I really hadn't thought about that and how that connection and making sure students have that connection.
Absolutely. So my next question, I'm going to stick with specifically OASIS. Obviously, I know a bit about the agency's efforts because I stay in touch and I, keep track of what's going on and try to stay in tune with what's going on statewide. And during my time there, we did a statewide survey to learn what are the drug use rates among the college students across New York. We had published a manual to help colleges and universities with their prevention efforts. We did a statewide conference every couple of years. And I know times change and resources change, and that might have been a golden age of being able to do all of that back in the 90s. But I know OASIS is still very much connected with college and universities. So what are some of the efforts specifically that OASIS is working on to help prevent drug use and misuse among college students?
Well, first of all, our survey work has expanded and we now have a young adult survey.
Great.
Actually, we have the first administration over the past couple of years. We're in the midst of the second administration of that young adult survey, because we know that we need to reach not only young adults who are in college settings, but also young adults that may not be in college, that may be working. And how do we look at strategies around working with the young adult population? And we've really started to look at the data and where we have not gone, because you set a great foundation working with a lot of the four-year campuses. So in our recent funding opportunity, actually, we funded our prevention providers to work with community colleges. And why did we select working with community colleges? Community college students, I don't want to call them non-traditional, but they're not
but they are.
A college. They're not living in a dorm.
Yeah.
So after their day is complete, they're going home. We don't know what the home environment is. We don't know what the community environment is. Some of them have stresses that include not only going to school, they may be working full time. They may have kids. And we want to reach that cohort of young people that are attending community colleges. And we took this time to say, wait a minute, let's talk about what we're able to provide and support with the community college students. In addition, the community college don't always have the resources that four-year campuses have in terms of student affairs, in terms of having an AOD director. So we took this time in recent funding opportunity to really work with SUNY and CUNY campuses and see what we could do for our system to go to those campuses and say, here's an opportunity for us to look at your student body, to talk to you, work with you about what type of services and supports that you think your campus needs. So, and that has really opened up the door to different opportunities for our prevention providers, but also campuses. Many of the projects, actually, there are 9 pilot projects right now that we're working on, working with SUNY 2-year colleges, CUNY 2-year campuses. They're doing environmental change strategies. So one of the campuses are doing things like, if a young person has a violation of the campus substance use policies, because we always remind here, and we're here in New York State, where adult use cannabis is legal, but always that reminder, it may be legal in New York State, but it's not legal on your campus.
Right.
To really have that opportunity to say, if a student is found to have violated some type of substance use policy on campus, that a lot of things happen. Things happen. We just don't say, slap the young person on the wrist and say, that was a bad thing that you did. We're going to suspend you or take some other type of disciplinary action. We want to make sure those kids get screened. So our prevention providers are doing the brief intervention for alcohol use and doing a brief intervention around cannabis use. So young people are getting screened. So that environmental strategy is, if a young person meets has that disciplinary action, that we make sure that there's some type of screening going on. And we're promoting it within that campus through the media piece, letting students know, there are requirements at our campus. There are things at our campus that you need to be aware of. And how do we promote those? How do we support young people with substance use? The other thing unique that some of the campuses and providers have worked on together is parenting programs. And people are saying, why parenting programs? We look at the future too. And many of our community college students are parents. So how do we help support them? By thinking about strategies, a range of strategies that can cause tension, stress, not only in their lives, but in the lives of their children. And how can we support that growth and development? Because at some point, their kids are going to go to school. Their kids are going to have foundational work happening in their school from pre-K through middle school, elementary school, the full pre-K through 12. We want to set that foundation and that support. And we know that with that support, it alleviates some of the stressors that students have. So we've really focused on that over the past couple of years, continuing our work with the 4-year campuses by being part of their meetings, providing supports. And we just think this is an opportunity to really build partnership with students and the campuses.
Yeah, there's so much to unpack here. I love the fact that there's such intensive work being done with community colleges specifically. Throughout my entire career, they have always been identified as an underserved, population or setting, if you will. It's one of the reasons a couple of years ago, we had produced one of the supplements to our Prevention with Purpose Strategic Planning Guide focuses on community and colleges and technical colleges for that reason. And, when we say non-traditional students, it's never meant in a negative or a pejorative way. When we hear college students, we tend to think of the typical 18 to 22-year-old. But we know community college students tend to skew older. And like you mentioned, many of them are parents. They may have full or close to full-time jobs. A lot of the other adult responsibilities, I use the air quotes there, that maybe a typical 18 to 22-year-old college student at a residence residential college might not yet have, although they are having their own stressors with jobs and sports and being a student as well. But you mentioned parenting programs, and it strikes me because whenever I am doing presentations or have conversations about prevention, preventing alcohol and drug misuse among community college students, I always say, it may be different than on a traditional campus. And I always bring in that parenting piece and say, okay, so maybe the prevention service on a community college isn't directly for the student, but if that student is a parent, then it's indirectly helping their children. Because you could be providing, as you say, education and prevention materials that they in turn can bring home and have conversations with their kids about, choices and consequences around alcohol and drug use. So I'm really glad that you brought up the parenting program piece.
And I think it's important, being a parent, I remember the days, and I was just going to the office where I was juggling two kids, trying to get out to an office on time, making sure everybody has their breakfast. What are we going to have for dinner when I get home? All of these things added to your life as a student can be a little overwhelming. And sometimes the stress can cause us not to react in a way that we want to with kids, right? So I think it's very important. And this has been a learning experience for us with the community college students, but I think it's very important. Again, it's not like you go to the dining hall. You've got to figure out, where am I going to get my groceries? How all of these things play into the life of a student. So we want to make sure that there's a level of support for those students. In addition, I think the screening piece is a very important piece, Rich, because we really need to think about how we screen young people going into college, what type of support we give them. How do we help address substance misuse with that young person? What is that brief intervention? What about motivational interviewing? How do we take all of those pieces and work with that young person? Not to say they're in trouble, but saying, what got you here? What put you in the place that you were referred to talk to someone in student affairs or are sent to our prevention provider? And we also want to take that opportunity to really identify when kids need more, because sometimes that young person needs more and it hasn't really presented itself that they need more. They may need mental health services. We may screen a young person and need to refer them for treatment services. So I think it's all part of the continuum of supports and services that we provide. And making sure that we have those connections. Our treatment team at our OASS and our recovery team also are working with campuses to make sure that services are available, to make sure that recovery supports are available for those students, and really talk about the continuum, not these siloed services. So that's, I think, advice that I would give to other states. Make sure that we're taking down those silos from prevention, treatment, recovery, and harm reduction. Make sure that we have the services and supports. Make sure that it is that full continuum.
Yeah. So I'm going to switch gears here, and I want to talk a bit about an issue that is really top of mind in schools and communities all around the country, and that is fake pills and illicit fentanyl. What are some ways in which OASAS is helping to raise awareness around this issue?
Well, actually, this past year we had a campaign. Actually, I believe it aired on the Super Bowl for the first time, where we had the story of a family that lost their daughter to an overdose. And it was a situation where this young woman was going out, and her friends, she and her friends were going to party, and it took one pill. and that young lady lost her life. One of the young women was, really had serious health issues afterwards, was in ICU, and one person came out of it not having that overdose. I think the thing is that that's a reminder to me. Three people together at the same time, and the outcome was different, right? Yeah. So we want to make sure people understand, and those real stories of how an overdose can affect a life, a community, is very important. In addition, we've had a tremendous, our communications team have, and I'm sitting in a room right now, it's so funny, where I'm facing all of these wonderful campaigns that our team has put together in terms of looking at media campaign around which pill, if they have a picture of pills, which pill has fentanyl? Can you tell? Right? One with a thumbtack and a little bit of fentanyl, and said, this is enough fentanyl to kill you. So we are actively at Oasis reaching out to not only college campuses, but the communities as a whole, talking about fake pills, talking about fentanyl, and how that can really cause overdoses. And we don't know. You just don't know. We are also very active in New York State, making sure that people have naloxone. On our website, oasas.ny.gov, people can go to our website and get free naloxone. And we encourage people, and we encourage campuses to make sure that they have this amazing life-saving tool available. But also, really, we really talk about things like fentanyl test strips and not using substances alone. All of these things are key components of our strategy in terms of public awareness and harm reduction to make sure that we're reaching young people. All of the resources that we have, from media campaigns to information about getting naloxone, we share with our partners in the education community, making sure that they're aware that these are resources and media campaigns that we have available. We also work very closely with our communications office to make sure that there are certain times of year that we talk about things like substance use and the party drugs and other substances that, pills and the whole continuum of services that we work very closely with our providers. We were just talking about the CUNY campuses and the SUNY campuses. One of our providers set up a coffee kiosk, talk about innovative, and during final exam period, talked to kids, had conversations with young people. They stopped by to get that free coffee, and they took the time to talk to them around fake pills, talk around other substance use, how to get support, how to get naloxone. All of these things really are key components. And we've worked very closely with the campuses to make sure that information, get it out and get those supports out.
I was furiously writing down some notes here, and I love that example of the coffee kiosk around final exam time, because when I talk to campuses and folks about, college students and prescription drug misuse, the class of prescription drugs that they are typically misusing are prescription stimulants, because they think if I pop an Addy or a Ritalin, it's going to help me get a better grade. By the way, there's no research to show that that's true. But you then tie in the fake pill issue with that. And, I know I've had the unfortunate situation of having conversations with moms and dads over the last couple of years who've lost a college student because they thought they were taking a Xanax or they thought they were taking an Adderall. You know, the key times of the year, I think midterms and finals, those are two touch points right there where students may be tempted to seek out what they think is a prescription stimulant because they think it's going to help them get a better grade. And yet they get a fake pill that's, 5 people removed and not from a trusted pharmacy. And next thing you know, they're a statistic.
And there are other times too that we need to talk to young people. I think we need to help parents do a better job of talking to young people before they go to school.
Sure.
I think that
some homework needs to be done there. Yeah.
Some homework needs to be done with those students. And if anybody's ever had a college student in their life or they remember when they were a college student, you go to campus, you're on campus for a month or so, and as my mother would say, you think you're grown, huh? And really having those conversations with young people, not one big conversation before you go to school, but maybe start those conversations. If you've got a senior student, not a senior citizen, but a senior student
right.
In high school, have those conversations. We should be having those conversations all along as natural as any conversation. But when maybe you see that public service announcement that we have regarding this family that lost their daughter, that's an open the door to conversation. You see a billboard as you're driving with that young person, that opens the door to conversation. And we need to have those conversations with young people as we're getting them ready for school. And when they come home, one of the times we recognize where there's some substance use, including binge drinking, is when kids come home for the holidays. Thanksgiving, they say the night before Thanksgiving is a big night for partying because kids come home, they're seeing their friends, they're getting together. And so we really want to think about those key pivotal times throughout final exams, midterm exams, when people are getting ready to go home, sending those reminders and getting those supports. And I think that is really key to reaching young people. And also, I think this is something I will admit that I need to do better in terms of my work in this agency and working as an MPM president, is really knowing what kids are doing and where they're getting their information. I think I know, but I tell people, yeah, I'm on Facebook, and they're like, that's for old people, right? That's for old people. Right. And then they start talking about ticking and talking and all of those other things. I'm at an age where I don't know all the ins and outs of communication and what's happening with young people. So I think it's always important that we go back and we talk to young people, not only through surveys, but also reach out and have those conversations and say, tell me what's going on. What are your concerns? What are your worries? How can we support you? There's a lot of pressure being young, and we forget what those pressures are. I think it's always going back and having those conversations and being part of those conversations that really help.
Yeah. So as the director of prevention for New York State and as president of NPN, what keeps you up at night?
Workforce. We have some amazing people within our systems, dedicated professionals, dedicated to the science of prevention, that come through a range of backgrounds. But it's really a challenge to get people to come into our field, to understand our field, to understand the prevention science. I think sometimes people think oh, I can do that. But we really want to make sure that we have the workforce that we need to do the work effectively and to make sure that it's done to fidelity. And that is really a challenge for all of us. Every time I'm in the company of my colleagues from the MPN, one of the main topics of conversation is the workforce, because we need to encourage more individuals, especially young people, to come into the field of prevention. I'm very excited about the fact that here in New York State, we had 2 cohorts of a paid prevention internship opportunity, where we had the opportunity, another connection with colleges, that our prevention providers received funding to go to the colleges in their community and provide a paid internship opportunity. When the students went through this opportunity, and I thank my colleague Sarah Mariani from the state of Washington, because we kind of took bits and pieces of her internship program and put it together to fit for New York State. But we did 2 cohorts, and we had almost 60 interns through 2 cohorts. Some providers had 1 intern, some providers did multiple interns. And from that, our first cohort had, I believe, around 30 interns. 8 of them accepted positions in the field. They had an opportunity to not only work in the field through their prevention provider. We supported a little stipend for their mentor. So, because that's extra work, we admit it, it's extra work. If anybody's ever had an intern, it's extra work. And we supported that and supported that relationship, but also as a centralized function of the internship program, we provided training. So they received SAPS training, the interns received cultural competency training, they received ethics training, and those were the 3 trainings that we provided. So they got that foundational training, and I was so pleased to hear that so many of them have gone, and to me, 8 out of 20 or 30 is amazing, have gone into the field. And actually, very exciting, and I have to throw in this little piece. There's an intern who's working with one of our providers down in New York City area, and accepted a position with that provider, and is now doing a parenting program in 2 state correctional facilities, and they're about to go into a city correctional facility to deliver parenting inside out, a parenting program for individuals that are incarcerated or in reentry process. Wow. And another important piece of that work is, making those connections, making sure those parenting skills are there after people have been away for a long time. All that to say, you don't know the joy I had when we were on a webinar, and all of a sudden, some woman said, "Oh, I was an intern." It was like, "Oh, yes." So it's really important that we think about our workforce, because we can get all the money, with the floodgates could open with funding, but if we don't have people to do the work and do the work with the science, it's really important. I guess the other thing that I have to say kind of keeps me up at night is the perception of harm that young people have, and increased access through the internet to substances. That is something I don't know if we were really prepared for. I hesitate to say that, but we prepare for alcohol outlets. We prepare for if you're in a state with adult use cannabis. We prepared for, okay, when the dispensaries open, we're going to set these strategies. But the strategy that I'm still struggling with some ways is that access piece through the internet. And you mentioned the fake pills earlier. Young people are getting fake pills. Young people are getting other substances through the internet, and they don't know what they're getting. So I guess those are my areas that kind of keep me up at night.
Well, certainly can appreciate why. We know that when the perception of harm goes down, the usage rates tend to go up. But I'm also glad you mentioned workforce and specifically interns. You mentioned, it can be a little bit of extra work. I know that firsthand, having had interns, both my previous role at CSAP, here at DEA, but boy, is it well worth it when you have an intern that is firing on all cylinders, and when you see them advance in their career, you certainly know that it was well worth the effort.
And what a wonderful experience for high school students and middle school students that they see someone that's close in age and having those discussions and being able to teach them the science of prevention, to look at data, to look at that needs assessment, so they can have that conversation with young people in their school. Maybe they're touching them through some campus work, through some of our prevention work that we're doing with the colleges, to say, everybody thinks that everybody's using substances, but the data doesn't tell us that. And so let's talk about some strategies to help you. Talk about those strategies. What are some talking points? What are some ways that we can help you? And I think it coming from a young person. I think that is a great opportunity. But again, I think workforce is the thing that keeps me up, because we've got to keep people in the field and keep that knowledge and understanding of prevention just at the forefront of our work.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up, I come to my final question, which is the standard question I ask of all of the guests on the podcast, and I call it the advice question. So what would you say to encourage the professionals who are working to prevent drug use and misuse among college students, as well as the students themselves who are watching this episode?
First of all, thank you. Thank you for your work. And I don't know if we say thank you enough. Because sometimes the work that you do is not evident immediately. Sometimes we see it through surveys and research. We see the data. But I know that on the ground level, that people are making a difference in college students' lives and in young people's lives. So that's the first thing I have to say, because that's a dedication that really helps really drives our work. What advice would I give? Stick to the science. Make sure that prevention science and SAMHSA's strategic prevention framework is always at the forefront. Risk and protective factors are always at the forefront, because that's our North Star. That's what we know. And what we know, the why, once we know the why, then we know the way to address substance use. And also hang in there. We need you. We need your advice. We need your experience. We need you to help make a difference in the lives of young people and the lives of their college campuses, in their community, with their families, because it's all tied together. It is all tied together. And sometimes we have to look at that campus, we have to look at that relationship we have with the school, and really, really think about what do they need and what supports can we provide as a system, and educate. So I don't know, did I cover all those things that I needed?
Absolutely. Those are three great takeaways, including the thank you, because I agree. Um, Sometimes prevention often feels like a thankless job, and a lot of us are not in this field to get the accolades and to get the thanks. I think the work, if you put in the work, you know, that satisfaction comes later, I guess. With all the hard work that you put into prevention. But I love sticking to the science. It's a mantra. Because as you said, the strategic prevention framework is our North Star. So thank you for that advice. And Pat, thank you for being on the podcast. It's been a joy for me to, continue to stay connected with, as I said, where I started it all, in my career, and love to continue I love the fact that we can get to continue to have this connection, and through the NPN and through OASIS, specifically. It's just, I got out of the interview exactly what I hoped going in, all the great work that's happening in New York, and advice that you have for our field.
No, Rich, thank you so much for keeping us in mind when you have these projects. I want to thank you and the DEA for your support of the NPN. We work so closely together. You support our participation and our meetings, and we really do appreciate that support because you really help us understand what's happening in communities around emergent drug issues. You provide us the support with our college campuses. And really just, I so appreciate anytime I ask you a question, I usually get several emails, several articles, reports, and that helps us. And it's a partnership. It's a partnership with you. It's a partnership with NASDAD. It's a partnership that with SAMHSA, CSAP, and those partnerships together make a difference. One last note, I remember my mother used to tell me this story about her grandfather, who would have been my great grandfather, and he did pulled the stick up and said, held the stick and said, break this in half. And you were able to break the stick in half. But as a bundle of sticks together, very hard to break that bundle. And I look at us as a bundle, the NPN and NASDAD and SAMHSA and CSAP and the DEA. And we're working together. And that partnership we have with you and our other federal partners, it's so important.
Well, thank you for that. DEA certainly appreciates its collaboration and partnership with NPN, and we look to continue it in the future. So again, Pat, thank you for being on the podcast, and to our viewers, thank you for tuning in, not only to this episode, but our previous episodes, all of which you can view on our website, campusdrugprevention.gov. So with that, I'm going to say thanks for watching and have a great day.